Welcome back. After last year's Zika outbreak, many think of the virus when they think of mosquitoes now. According to state numbers, last year nearly 1,500 cases of Zika were reported in our state. The majority were travel-related, but 285 were acquired through local transmission. Now, the Suncoast has some of the lowest infection rates in the state, with just 6 cases in Manatee and 5 in Sarasota. So far this year, we've had no infections locally. Statewide, there have been 113 Zika cases detected. The majority of those were travel-related. So what can we do to keep the number of infections low? We've got the 2 top guys to talk to right now, the 2 Suncoast experts, Matt Smith on the left, Director of the Mosquito Management for Sarasota County, and Mark Latham, Matt's counterpart in Manatee County. Gentlemen, thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
We talked before the show and you said it's been a bit of a perfect storm, pardon the pun. A mosquito explosion.
Absolutely.
What are the elements that had to happen to get to this point?
Well, first we had a prolonged drought. So areas that would typically hold water year-round, swamps and woodland pools and things like that, that would also have little miniature ecosystems that would have a lot of natural predators and things to somewhat control the mosquitoes on their own, those dried up. And with that, all the natural predators went away. And so then what you had was an end to the drought, which was a nice constant set of rain events that I believe totaled about 13 inches in Sarasota County during the month of June. And so you filled all those areas back up. The mosquitoes were quick to exploit that, and they'll do that way before any kind of predators could get into the system.
Mark, you say you've gotten some phone calls from some of your residents in Lakewood Ranch, for example, who complain of more mosquitoes than ever at their front door.
That's it. And obviously, being the year where we had an explosion and we don't normally see that, and also a lot of the residents in Lakewood Ranch might be termed new residents to Florida or to this area, that added to that problem. We tried to explain to them where it was coming from, why we had it, and what they could do. Obviously, we were trying to point out that these weren't the Zika mosquitoes. This was a different species that was not really an aggressive biter, but still, I understand their alarm in seeing, a bunch of mosquitoes hanging around the front door and a few of them following them inside.
Yeah, you explained to me very gently before the show began the cycle of how this all happens, and as you touched on initially, Matt, and I was never very good in science, so therefore I'm glad you used layman's terms with me. Dry winter, stagnant water, predators died, and then the mosquitoes were able to flourish because the predators had died during the dry weather. Am I warm?
That's it.
That's it right there? With the advent of Zika, you're seeing more armchair quarterbacks wanting to know more about what you're doing, maybe second-guessing your approaches. Is that true?
Absolutely.
Tell me more about that.
Well, we do have more scrutiny on our methods and materials, so to speak, because everyone is concerned about not only Zika, but now you have a lot of concern about the products we're using to control mosquitoes in general. So we do get questions from various areas of citizens and everybody else involved, concerned about what we're spraying, when we're not spraying, why we're not spraying, all those sorts of things.
Do you appreciate the attention, Mark, or do you wish they just get back to how it was before?
Well, I mean, we appreciate the attention. I mean, obviously we want them to be aware of mosquitoes and what they can do. That's the thing that we're emphasizing, that yes, they're seeing, last year seeing on the headlines of the news, Zika mosquitoes, Zika mosquitoes, Zika mosquitoes. And so we're saying, great, you're aware, please help yourselves. We can't do it all. We've got to use our methods, but we can't do it all. We need your help.
All right, we'll get back to Zika in a second, but first, you had mentioned there's one particular mosquito this year that's bad. Not that we know what it is, but what is it called?
Culex nigropalpus.
Right.
It's the most common mosquito in this area anyway. They by far outnumber all the other species. But we have had, as you mentioned, what we would say is the perfect storm of meteorological conditions to give them just absolute population explosion. So those are the ones that are hanging around your door, bothering you, generally just being everywhere all the time right now.
You're trying to avoid using the phrase really bugs you, right?
Yeah.
Bad joke. You say cows are particularly prone to these mosquitoes, and also you said lizards are also targets for mosquitoes.
Well, that's Matt has been doing. They've been doing some blood analysis. You can look at the antibodies in the blood serum to see where they came from. And yes, I mean, they, as Matt pointed out, these mosquitoes will bite almost anything. The good thing is, though, with these mosquitoes is that they're not an aggressive day-biting mosquito. Really, for you to be bitten by them, you have to be out at night. They wait till probably 15 to 30 minutes after sundown before they really become active.
So in the big picture, excuse me, is this the worst mosquito season you've seen? And if so, in how many years?
Well, I've only been working in Florida now for 4 years. So yes, this is the worst I've seen. Definitely, maybe not even so much saying it's the worst, but it's the earliest. We have had some, a couple of years, or we've had one other year I can think of in my 4 years where we had some extremely high numbers like this, even of the Culex nigra palpus. I think this definitely tops it, and it's also earlier than normal, being that it really exploded in June. Normally it's July and into August when we'll see more rain and more growth of these species.
Your perspective?
Well, I have seen other years. I mean, I've been in Florida for 33 years.
Right.
So, yeah, I've seen other years where we've had this, where we've had the perfect storm, very dry winter, early wet summer, which builds those populations. So it's something that, you know, we have to deal with, we're ready for. So we just want to, you know, assure the public that we're doing everything we can and that they need to do their part.
All right, 33 years, you've not lost the accent yet, huh?
Not yet. No.
Right. We'll talk more about what you're doing to help the public and more in our discussion and the weather, all that and more after this. Welcome back tonight. We're talking about mosquito season and how you can protect yourself. We've got the two top men from Sarasota and Manatee County, Matt Smith and Mark Latham. We established last half hour, gentlemen, this has been the worst mosquito season you've seen. It's been a perfect storm for a variety of reasons. And I asked you during the break also, when is mosquito season? And Matt, you had a quick answer for me, didn't you?
Hurricane season, that's typically what we say, because that's typically the warmer, wetter part of the year.
Now, let's talk about Zika for a few moments here. Of course, Zika virus was all over the news last year. Not as much this year. How come?
Well, we are not seeing the hot spots where it came from, which is in the Caribbean and South America, Brazil. Most of the people that would be the major carriers are now immune, and so there is less chance of having someone going down there and picking it up from a mosquito. It's far less. It's what we call herd immunity. And that affects then travelers, who is the way it gets into this country. There's less chance of them picking it up and bringing it back here.
So is it safe to say the worst is over, Matt?
I would like to think so. Yeah, it's always unpredictable. There's always X factors in anything, but for the most part, we believe it is. Also, you know, another thing I think that's contributing to it is that we've done our job. And of course not just me and Mark, even though we've done great jobs. In general, mosquito control here and in Zika countries has really worked on source reduction, getting rid of the breeding sites, getting people to stop being bitten, bed nets, repellents, those sorts of things. So.
Well, I'm going to lay out some numbers here and then ask you a tough question. The state, as we heard earlier in Kate Flexter's story, the state is allocating $61 million for emergency funding, prevention, preparedness, $25 million more for university research. So nearly $100 million towards Zika, and you say it's getting better. So, is the government overreacting?
Absolutely not.
No.
No.
But you said it's getting better.
There's other things out there than Zika. And it's not about whether or not Zika is getting better. You don't just let up your guard, because it can, you can have resurgences of diseases. Typically it's years later when the herd immunity drops, those sorts of things. But also you have other diseases out there. There's plenty of mosquito-borne illnesses that could be transmitted in, and so you really need a robust system of not only mosquito control, but research and development going on all the time to make sure that people stay safe. You don't want to wait until you have some sort of major outbreak and then start trying to scramble to get money together and get researchers working on it.
So I'll play devil's advocate, Mark, and continue the same line of questioning. If you have a referendum of the average taxpayer, a choice, would you rather put nearly $100 million towards Zika or get a tax rebate? You know, what would they say?
Well, I mean, when you're living in a state like Florida, where you're exposed to mosquitoes all the time, despite our best efforts, then I think I'd like to think it was a long time coming. I mean, you look at what is the major source of revenue for the state, and I believe it's tourism. And if you're seeing on the news Zika or chikungunya or dengue, guess how many tourist dollars you lose? So putting $100 million in to a multi-billion-dollar industry, I don't think is wasting money at all.
We also talked along the way about other phrases like West Nile, that was so big, encephalitis, chikungunya.
Right.
Those have all kind of been the flavor of the month, flavor of the year, and somehow drifted away. So might Zika follow that same arc?
Yeah, it very well could, but you'll also notice that things like West Nile still pop up from time to time. St. Louis encephalitis that most people don't hear about, occasionally you'll have resurgences of that, and when you do, it's typically big news.
So we've reacted well to Zika.
I think so. Obviously, we would like to have been more prepared, and again, going back to the money being put into research, it's this. We have 46 mosquito species in Manatee and Sarasota counties. It's this one species that first was responsible for dengue hundreds of years ago, but then again in 2009, then chikungunya, and then Zika. It's just this one species. So a lot of research going into this mosquito and what is the best methods for control, new methods of control. They're doing a lot of research on that. Possibly methods that aren't using pesticides. And I think this is very important.
So we talked earlier about the mosquito explosion going on right now due to a perfect storm of sorts, the dry conditions followed by the predators dying out, mosquitoes proliferating. You each have a nice budget, $3.2 million in Sarasota County, $4 million in Manatee County. Where does most of your money go? Because most laymen might think, wow, that's a lot of money to fight mosquitoes and fight that situation. Where does your money go exactly?
Well, a large part of it goes, of course, to personnel, the pay and benefits and things.
How large is the staff?
We have 19 full-time staff, and currently we have 9 seasonal aides that we bring on for the 6-month mosquito season.
Are you in the same ballpark?
A little bit larger. We have 29 full-time staff and 4 or 5 seasonal workers.
Are Sarasota and Manatee relatively identical when it comes to this whole thing, or perhaps is there more farmland in one of the two counties, or are you pretty similar?
I'd say we are similar. We might have more salt marsh, what we call salt marsh area, which is where one of our major pest mosquitoes come from, so our coastal swamps. Most of Sarasota has been developed, and so the coastal swamps aren't such a big problem. Otherwise, I mean, Manatee is a big farming community. We both suffer from the same issues, which is the developments, big developments moving out into the country and moving out to the mosquito's home. And so we're getting more demand for services. I mean, I can't exactly tell my public, you're moving into a swamp, so we're not giving you any service. They're moving into bad mosquito areas, we still got to provide the service, so that's going to require, our budget's increasing, more personnel to cover a bigger area. I mean, the population of Manatee County has probably increased in my 22 years, probably 40%.
Right.
So I've got to cover that increase with an increased budget, increased, staff.
Let me lob you both a softball and take this any way you want to go with it. How has your business changed over the past few years, 10 years, whatever you want to gauge it, technology or science? What's the biggest change since you first got in the business for you compared to how it is now? You can go first.
I would say the biggest change, it really is technological advancements. One of the big ones is data management, having cloud-based real-time data management that's fast and easy to use. Another one is disease monitoring or testing. It used to be that we had to send samples to various labs and wait long periods of time, but now for a really low cost, we were able to get real-time PCR testing in our lab so that we can do ultra-sensitive genetic testing for mosquito disease in less than 2 hours.
What would you say, Mark?
Yeah, I'd say the same thing. On the negative side, social media and the internet, the increase in that has been big increase in people being aware and being all over us.
Yeah, all right. Up next, some final thoughts from our guests, plus some viewer mail on last night's controversial topic about the National Rifle Association and a recent ad. Stay with us. Welcome back. Our guests now join us for their final thoughts. Of course, we've got Matt from Sarasota County and Mark from Manatee County. And perhaps the final thought from you might be what the citizens can do to be proactive during this worst mosquito season in years.
Yeah, which is what we always tell people, which is number 1, don't get bit. Number 2, don't breed your own. And of course, it's a little more complicated. Wear repellents, specifically those things that are approved by the CDC, that have been studied and have real data on them, and also cover your clothing or your skin with clothing, preferably light colored. And don't breed mosquitoes. If there's anything that can hold water in this weather, it will, and if it will, it probably will breed mosquitoes. And you just have to eliminate that at least once a week. We prefer twice.
Good idea. And Mark, you know, we talked about Zika quite a bit, but along the way you say West Nile has not entirely gone away. Did you say there's been 4 cases this year in Manatee County?
Not cases. I mean, it's our sentinel chickens. We have 14 flocks of 6 chickens each that we bleed once a week, and they detect the antibodies to the virus when they've been bitten by a mosquito with the virus. And you know, we're showing some activity out there. We don't have human cases, but I would always tell people, don't let you down your guard. And it's the very common mosquito that bites at night, which transmits West Nile. So if you have to be out at night, if you're working livestock or anything else, then wear repellents. Take the necessary steps. And if you don't have to be out at night where mosquitoes are bad, don't be out there.
Don't do it at all.
Yeah.
Okay, good advice. All right. Before we go, let's take a look at what some of our viewers had to say about last night's topic, a controversial one, a new ad by the NRA. It shows protesters, as you see, calling on members to fight, quote, violence of lies with the clenched fist of truth. While some say it is a call for members to take up arms, others say it is meant to condemn violence, not promote it. We asked what you thought. Michael Eliason wrote, it has the word violent in it, along with assassination, smash, burn, bully, terrorize, madness, fight. Not hard to see what tone is being set, he wrote. Joe Brower said, the political left has been trying to paint law-abiding gun owners as violent mooks for decades. If we were 1/10 as violent as you brainwashed sheep think we are, this discussion would already be over. And Inna Love wrote, look at everyone getting worked up, left or right. All the NRA cares about in the end is profit and survival of the business. So they do whatever it takes. Desperate. If you want to comment on this or tonight's topic, go to our Facebook page at facebook.com/news@7. You can also watch past discussions on demand. They're available on Apple TV, Amazon Fire, and also Roku. I imagine our letters tomorrow might not be quite as vitriolic as tonight's were about last night's topic. I saw you both reacting to those letters. Yeah. Thank you to both of our guests for being here. Matt Smith, the Director of Mosquito Control for Sarasota County, and Mark Latham, Director of Mosquito Control for Manatee County.